So as the music fades and the lights come on, I'm guessing it's our moment. So thank you all very much for coming. Is everybody sitting comfortably? Long ago, there used to be a radio program where they said, "Are you all sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin." So we're going to begin. Lovely to have you here. And more importantly, how lovely to have all of you here. And I believe that there's a little bit of a butterfly situation going on because this is all your first time. So can we have a round of applause for our debut writers? Yes, it's wonderful. And I've always said, you know, there's only ever a first time. After this, you'll just be so practiced and so cool. So that's wonderful. Blaq Pearl, you have no butterflies because you are so, this is, as somebody said, this is not your first rodeo. So I'm going to put you in the hot seat and we're going to start with you because it's important, because you are important, because everybody is, because all lives matter. But you're particularly important because it's you, it's at your instigation that this little book has been put together. And I think there's so much to say about you that I'm going to try very hard to abbreviate it. But the thing about you is that there is you, and then there is the Blaq Pearl Foundation. The Blaq Pearl Foundation is many, many things, but you are many things. So I'm just going to, at risk of making you blush, I'm just going to read, for those of you who don't know Blaq Pearl, a.k.a. Janine Overmeyer. She is, who doesn't know her? Oh, well, then I'm talking to you, because you're the only person who doesn't know her. So she's a writer of poetry and of song. She's a musician. She does Afro, soul, hip-hop, R&B and jazz. And her debut album was called Against All Odds, a fighting title. And her anthology of poems and songs is called Karada. Is that how you pronounce it? Oh, look, you know. You can tell it's not her first rodeo. She's also written a musical, Cultuur van Vandaag. So that's another feather in your cap. And her latest production is a one-woman show called Story van my leven, which is very exciting. We're going to find out a little bit about your life in just a minute. But she also, and interesting this, she also has a degree in psychology from the UWC, so beware what you say around her because she might just analyze you. But I think for you, Blaq Pearl, development work around social issues, I get that it's kind of your heartbeat. This is really what you're, you know, if you were to leave one legacy, that would possibly be it. I might be wrong. So there's quite a lot to share about Blaq Pearl herself, but there's a huge amount to share in this little book. Don't be deceived by the slenderness of this little volume, because there are many lives in here. I didn't count how many. How many lives have we got?
19.
19, lucky for some. So 19 people have bared their souls, or actually that's not quite true. They've started to bare their souls, because I feel that there's a whole lot more. So, you know, I'm just going to quickly say this, because I was talking to a group of people this morning about writing and writers, and one of the things about telling your story is that when you listen to somebody else's story, or even when you read somebody else's story, your own story is sort of winding round in your head, and you're relating or thinking, what would I have done? How would that... So it's it's a you, me, and us thing. Telling your story is not just for you. It's not just about you. So it's really important that stories need to be told. And I found that not only have we got stories in this book, I found there was much wisdom, which doesn't mean that you're all Einstein. It absolutely does not mean that. But it's the sort of wisdom that doesn't sort of get into textbooks, but it's the sort of wisdom that comes with reflection and self-reflection. And I think that's the sort of thing that so many of us put up a mask about, and we don't actually allow that sort of thing to be shown. But once you start reflecting, self-reflecting, and once you write it down, there's a huge amount of wisdom for you to learn yourself, but also for you to share with others. So congratulations on being brave enough, because I know, and talking of psychology, anybody who's been to a psychologist will know that they say, so how are you feeling? And you think, oh my God, I don't know. And when you sit down to write, you have to really sort of pull it out of yourself, and that's no easy journey. So Blaq Pearl, a.k.a. Janine, Miss BP, as I like to call you. The Blaq Pearl Foundation, to give it an overview, it's many, many things, but it's official overview, and don't look for the website because it's under construction. But officially, it's implementing programs that provide effective support, learning spaces, edutainment, and opportunities for young people in particular. So there are many things there, but this project in particular, the one that we're here to talk about, is called Creating Books and Stories from People in Cape Town. It's very simple. It's a very simple idea. But I think what I would like to find out from you was, what was the aha moment? When did you think, we need to do this book? We need to get people writing.
Sure. It actually came on for quite some time, a couple of years back already, when... Look, I've always been very passionate about people's stories, you know, and respecting everyone's journey. And so it's kind of been there for a long time. And then I must say, I tend to create initiatives based on the need that there is. So if enough people knock on my door or come and ask for help or say they want to do this or do that but don't know where or how, I then have that aha moment, and I try to put together my head, my heart, my resources, my team, and we say, let's do something about this, let's make it happen. And that's the way I like to work, and we did the same with this book. But I must say in particular, there was a man, a couple of years ago, he came to my office with his book in his hand. His A4 boeken, my school boeken. No? He had a few books, in fact, but this is the one in particular he gave me before this book. And he kept coming and he said, ek het gehoor van julle, Janine, wat mense help en programme doen. En ek hoor, sy's 'n skrywer en sy het jou eie boek en so aan. Toe sê, en hy kom en hy vra, I need help, can you help me get my work out there? And this man was so persistent. He's sitting in the audience, actually. He's there, he's waving. He's also in the book, but he was so persistent and so passionate, and there was no way I could turn back and not do something about it. And he kept coming back. Before lockdown, he came almost every month on a regular basis. Hoe ver is ons nou, kan jy nog my help? Wanneer gaan ons dit doen? Dan sê ek vir hom, Patrick, ons gaan het doen, hou net 'n bietjie aan, ons gaan daar kom. And he just didn't give up, you know, and I appreciate that, and he knows now that I also didn't just say that, and I didn't give up either. And when this initiative or this book came about, and I finally said, we're going to do this, you know, we started putting out a call, and what we also did was, I applied. There was a call from the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport. There was a call for funding applications with regards to culture and arts. And I saw this on the way of already having, not having the book, but having the whole idea and the concept and having, knowing what we need, you know. So the call came and I was like, whoa, I have to apply. This would really just make this go easier and make it, get us to the resources and the funds that we need to roll out this book and to print and all of that. And so I applied, and we got the funding. Yep. You know, and it wasn't a lot; it was really a little. But I'm so grateful for it because we could print the books, we could have our workshops as well, and provide food to those who came physically to the workshops, of course. And and then here we're sitting with the book. You know, a couple of months later, it didn't even take that long. I think it took me a month to actually, 2 months to put it together. And in that time, I also had to fly to France for a week with another project. And then I was like, I'm busy with this book. We have to get it out. And I'm busy chatting with the writers. And Kristen's at the office busy with the paperwork and admin. And I'm just like, but I also have to be here present where I am because I'm constantly creating and developing as an artist myself. And being in France was that for me. So it was as much as I'm giving, I was also filling up, you know. And it can become exhausting, giving. So mentally and psychologically, I know that and spiritually, I have to fill myself up again as well in order to continue giving and sharing and assisting along the way.
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of responses in that, but not least, it's about filling yourself up. And there's something about listening as opposed to talking, and listening is as valuable as talking. It can be. And interestingly, you quickly went to France, just like that, in the middle of it all. And I'm thinking, you know, that you got the funding. I mean, money isn't everything, but it sure does help.
Yes.
It's suddenly you think, okay, we can do this.
Yes.
So it's quite I'm interested that it only took a couple of months. I think, wow, that's quite something. But there's a journey between the aha moment and making it happen, because first you had to find your people, you had to find your writers.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if people were beating a path to the door, or did you have to grab them kicking and screaming? Was it a volunteer? How did you get your writers?
Yes, then we put out a call for writers all over Cape Town to apply, and they all applied. And there was more, there's still more, there's a bit of a waiting list, so there's clearly having to be another book after this one, or many more after this one. And so, all of them applied. There was a screening process, application form they had to fill in so we know, and a motivation, of course, why they want to be part of this. And myself and my team at the Blaq Pearl Foundation, of course, had to go through each and every one of them and shortlist, okay, we're going to stop at 19 stories. And almost all of them, the 4 of them and the others in the book, have so many stories. It's like it's as if we, hoe sê mens dit nou in Engels? Ek wil dit in Afrikaans. As amper soos, hulle het net gewag vir ons, you know? They literally waited on us, and a lot of them said, I have so many stories. I have a dream to put out my own book and my own story, and also we had to concise a lot of their own journey or their own stories, because obviously one person's story is never ending, you know. Even after passing, your journey, your legacy remains.
You know, I'm interested in the 19. Who chooses 19? I mean, 20, 21, 25, 19. I'm sure maybe it's a magic number, but you mustn't listen to the answer to this, guys. But what was it when you went through this whole pile of people? What was the magic, they're the one, ingredient?
The deadline.
Oh.
As simple as that. We had a deadline, and I couldn't, like I say, we had to just like draw the line and be okay. Because with this, obviously a process, so we did the screening, the applications, then we went through the motivation, and then we had to go through the stories. And with that, we have to have the process following that, which is the editing, the design, the layout, the printing. And because of that, we couldn't add more for now, because everything had a timeline. And if we had to exceed that amount of... So it wasn't really about 19 people. You know? Okay. It was really more about a lot of other factors contributing to... We had to cut off and be like, okay, we have enough stories.
You've sort of answered my next question, because I fondly thought you got all these people, then you put them in a room, you gave them a pencil and paper and said, okay, off you go. But actually, you invited them to submit a story, which I can imagine might have been a bit of a thing. So was that it? Did you say, what was your brief?
Yeah. Submit your own story.
No length, no word count?
Nothing, no limit. Submit your story. I did the editing, of course, which was, a process, was like heavy. Yeah. Having to constantly read the stories and just connecting with the people, the writers, you know. Like I say, they all have written at some point in their lives already. I wasn't about to put out any particular strict criteria. The main thing, we wanted to create a platform for you who already have your story, and your story can be any amount, you know. However, at some point we had to cut it to 1-2 pages, maximum 2 pages, because we had to look at different factors again, including the budget, how many pages can we print, you know, how much do we have, can we afford, and all of that.
Yeah.
So...
okay, so let me stop you there.
Yeah.
So not only did they submit their stories, and the choice must have been quite a thing, but they also submitted their bios, because in the book you've got not only their story, but you've got the bios at the back, and I thought, oh, this is interesting, tell me a little bit more about this person. So that in itself would have been something to look at. Okay, let's find out. Yeah. When you saw this brief, I'm tempted to start with you because you're the closest, but you're the boy, so I'm going to leave you till the last. So I'm going to start with you, Tiffany. Have you done a lot of writing before? I know that it's all in here, but had you done a lot of writing? And when it came to submitting something, What was going on in your mind?
I have done writing before, but not on a public platform. I've only done writing for myself. My diary. When I'm angry, I write. When I feel certain things needs to get out of me, I would write. But I never had the opportunity or thought that I was able to be a writer. I never had a perception in my mind that something needed to qualify me to be a writer. So in my mind, a writer was someone that attended a university, that a writer, artist was someone that had a certain degree or master's or whatever you call it. So when I saw the post inviting writers to submit their stories from Blaq Pearl, I saw the post for someone else that I knew was writing, but I also knew that I wanted to write and I wanted to submit something. And I had, in that moment, I had written Grace Found Me, but I never wrote it I never thought it was good enough to be put out there. So, yeah, I have been writing, but for myself.
That's so interesting. I mean, that's a real declaration, because it's one thing to write, you know, as you say, in your diary or the notebook. And they do say, I think if you go to Alcoholics Anonymous or if you go into rehab, they say, write your story and then burn it, so nobody else never needs to see it. But actually to share it with somebody else, it's really quite a thing. Gosh, thanks for sharing that. And I'm interested in your perception of what a writer should look like, who they should be. Berenice, what about you? Was this the first time that you've got quite a big story. Was this the first time that you'd put it out there for people to read?
Yes, it's the very first time for me when I saw the advert of when you can apply to write your story or your book. For me, when I heard writing your story, I thought it was like, because what's so funny enough, when I sent my story to Blaq Pearl, it was actually my biography that I sent to her. I thought that was my story that I needed to tell. And then a secretary came back to me. She said, "No, you need to tell me your story." So I thought that was my story, you know. And then I thought, and then we had a Zoom meeting where we had a discussion on how to write the story, and Janine explained to us. And I thought, wow, since I need to really think now, because I want to tell my life story. Because my story goes about child abuse and, you know, all those things. So I had to think back on the first memory that I had of my life. And you know, it was when I was 4.5 years old. And then when I had started writing my story, it was, you know, and it didn't even take me long to tell my story. I was actually also late. Janine gave us like a time limit when we had to do our story. And I actually wanted to back out of telling my story. And I told myself, no, this is something that I really want to do for myself. And I want to encourage each and everybody that's going through what I went through, and also like empower themselves to achieve what I have achieved in my life. And then I took a breath, and I had my phone with me. I can so clearly remember that it was on a Sunday evening, because we had to actually, it had to be in by the Saturday. And I did it the Sunday, and so I just sat down and started typing my story. And then I sent it. I asked Janine, so they said they're going to check now for corrections and anything. And to my surprise, when I asked Janine what the outcome, and then she told me, no, your story is perfect. There needs no correction and nothing. So she was happy with my story, and that made me feel so glad and happy about myself and achieving that, telling my story. Yeah, so that is how it happened.
Gosh, how affirming to have somebody say, no, it's perfect. Oh, gosh, not many writers hear that ever. That's interesting, because when I mentioned about people's biographies, I read your biography and I thought, sure, but there's a lot of stories here. And it's interesting that you, Blaq Pearl, that you said, no, we need one story, because everybody, even if you're 10, you've got lots of stories, and it's a matter of which little snippet. So interesting that you started with memory, a memory. We'll come back to memory in just a minute, because memory is a very slippery thing. You think you remember, and then you find that you sort of invented things, and then your sister said, no, it wasn't like that. So memory is all kinds of things. So there you were typing away on your phone. I really admire that. Let me see your thumbs. Look at those fingernails. How did you do that? So the other thing is deciding whether to write in poetry, because nobody said, I don't think there was anything in the brief that says got to be poetry, got to be prose. So, sorry, I keep doing it. Samantha, you've done one of each. Yes. So for you, what's the difference between writing in not rhyme, but writing poetry and writing prose? And in which one are you more comfortable?
I think poetry would be my main thing that I do, because I've been writing poetry before I wrote stories. And I feel good about my poems. So
yeah.
That is the best way that I express myself.
Okay. So, and it's interesting, I think that your poem, we're talking about, Berenice, we're talking about your story, but your poem is more, it's more of a thing that you're thinking about rather than this is my story.
Yes.
Yeah? So you feel more comfortable with poetry. Can you identify that? I mean, have you read a lot of poetry in your life that's meant something to you?
Yes, actually I've performed one of my poems as well. That was my first poems that I performed at Blaqpearl Foundation as well. And I've been writing a lot of poems before that. I have 4 to 3 books full of poems. And when I actually performed my first poem, it actually made me realize that this is actually good. And a lot of people can relate to the way I write, because I'm more of a deep type of writer, and it always goes about how you survive or how your feelings can turn into something, etc.
And you've got a nice, deep, husky voice, which also makes it fun. And, you know, there's another thing, whether it's poetry or whether it's prose, the other thing is whether you speak it or whether you write it. Because if you write it, as you were saying, Tiffany, you know, you can write it and nobody need know. But to actually write it so that other people, but to actually stand up and watch people's faces, or hopefully you don't, because who wants to do that? It's a whole nother thing. So, but for you, it works, Samantha. You like to have the spotlight on you, so you must be very happy sitting here.
Yes, very.
Okay. So, Kyle, you have written a piece called, let me just, I've made you little blue tags here for obvious reasons. How predictable am I? A young man comes home. So this, for you, it felt very much like a sort of a thinking piece. It is about you, but it's a little bit about more than you. Do you want to give us the origins of this story?
Yes, definitely. I think for me, when I think I can take it back to when Janine put out the call, and I've been involved in multiple projects, especially within my community, because there are many poets there, and I've been featured in their books. I've been part of Funza Literacy Trust Fellowship. I've been part of that, so I've gained a lot from there. But I think within my story, a young man comes home. I'm from a community called Elsie's River, which is a community that people often assert with violence, that is very impoverished, and where there isn't many opportunities there. And I think when the opportunity came, I told myself, and a lot of times when I wrote the story and I told myself, okay, I need to write the story, when I wrote it, then usually in primary school, if we come back from a holiday, and then when you come back the first day, the teacher will tell me, you must write now an essay about your holiday. And then you think to yourself, but do I really want to write this? But then when I saw this opportunity, I told myself, Kyle, here's a chance for you to really depict how your community is and how it contributes to you as a character, to you as how principled you are. And many of that contributions come from your family. And it isn't easy for your family because obviously there are many contributing factors on the communities. So I think for me is that I really wanted to speak in this story of when I come home, what do I come home to? Like, and I say in the book, the people often say home is where the heart is, but do they know what we come home to? Do they know what we need to face at home and so forth? So I just wanted to bring across that a young man, even a young woman, when they come home, there are many other things that we need to consider that they're coming home to and that they need to face. But that is not actually about the community or the location where they're at, but it's actually about the person and how they wish to bring across who they are.
Yeah, I'm just going to read this line because I thought it was so clever. I come home to find the struggles of the next front page article that puts my community in the fear stages of many people's minds. But I guess that's our business and nobody else's. How clever is that? Yeah, again, lots of things that you say there, not least school. Janine, I want to come back to this sort of raw versus edited. And Berenice here, her piece was perfect. But, you know, there's a line, if you're not a practice writer, if it's not something that you've studied or didn't have much of an opportunity to do at school, you're going to write soma like you speak. And there's a lot to be said for that because it's visceral and it comes out. Yeah. And this is, you know, I'm just writing this because this is what I think. Versus something that's been crafted and edited and proofread. What's your feeling when you got these stories? Did you think, oh my word, got to, you know, look, what were they thinking? Did you go through it with a red pen, or were you a little bit cautious about messing with other people's work?
That actually, I was very cautious about messing with the story. Even when I edited, I didn't want to change something and make it out of context. So that for me was a challenging part, but also not because I really wanted to do justice to the authentic, you know, submission of their story. And again, because why must people feel like there's this line in between what makes you a writer and what doesn't make you a writer, you know? The moment you pen down and you write down your story, you can be a writer. You decide and define how you want to be termed, how do you want to call yourself, you know? And nobody else should be doing this. All these industries, you know, how it stops people from pushing and reaching their own and their full potential because of these, the mindset and telling us, no, you can't be a writer, you didn't go to university, you didn't go study linguistics, etc., which I actually went to study linguistics as well. So I intentionally did not want to mess around with this story. And when I told Berenice the story is perfect, there was some editing I had to do, but I meant for her, it's perfect, there's nothing, because Berenice was so worried all the time. I don't know if it's going to look right, if it's going to sound right. You know, and I said, there's no right or wrong, it's your story. You know, I can't take away anything from your story or add anything to your stories, you know. So that made it easy for me. But the editing, I needed to clean up here and there, you know, because of some errors and spelling mistakes and repetition of words, you know, that could lose your reader. Yeah. And I really, you know, I aimed at that when I edited, when I structured the text in a sense that it will keep the reader interested. You know, you know, grammatically you can, if you do it wrong, you know, you can lose your reader if there's words that shouldn't be there or if it's too much of the same word there. So I wanted to keep it as real as I submitted, but also do it professionally, you know. Also wanted to put something professional. So either you do it well, or don't do it. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's your gig, so you do it as you want. So that's editing, that's external editing. Berenice, she have the perfect piece of work. There's also self-editing, and I'm sure that you all know what I mean. So when you're writing, you think, oh no, I can't say that. Oh no, too much, given away too much, you know, embarrassing. Was there any of that?
There was, actually, because Janine told me, don't give away too much of your story. So I had to think now. So, okay, I'm writing about this, but I'm not going to give too much detail. Okay, that's fine. And then I also, some of my, the things that I wrote in my story was also very personal. So I had to think about the people involved also that I'm writing about. So I didn't want to, because there was that I wanted to change, but then it was too late. But it was okay. But there's a lot of things that you need to think about. Also, if you tell too much, then how are you going to write your book? So yeah, so I was while I was writing, typing my story, that was how I was thinking. Yes.
Yeah.
Not telling too much of the story, but be giving like they say, a dot that. Like a sentence, like a PowerPoint.
Yes.
Yeah.
A full stop.
Yeah, a full stop, and then they must wonder what was that about.
Yeah.
Say there's quite a few stories, things that I'm talking about. So yeah, I think I can write a book from each of them.
Yes.
So yeah, so that is how I pinpointed my story, and it's still going on also.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
And I stopped at a certain point, so I thought that was enough now.
Yeah. So you'll have to come with the diary, like
Yes.
Tiffany's talking. And I love the idea of the PowerPoint. I'd never seen a full stop as a PowerPoint, but it is, because you have the power to stop that sentence
Yes.
right there. So that's really good.
Nancy,
Yeah.
Before you go on, can I
Yeah.
just add? So the whole intention, of this book also is really to give ordinary people that introduction, ordinary people that has a passion for writing, that writes in private, but maybe want to explore going out there with their writing, So this is literally an introduction to the world, their introduction to the world. Most of them want to write their own books and manuscripts, and I'm like, yes, go for it, They're already contacting me like, so can you help me with my book? But this was really to introduce them. So I told most of them, don't write. Don't give us your whole story. Leave that for your book. Let us just introduce you to the world, and that means also introduce a part of your journey, of your story. When you publish your own book, which I hope all of them
reveal
will.
all.
Then you give your all to the world.
And you talk to Melinda Ferguson, and she'll tell you, bring it all on.
Yes.
But while we're on that, interesting that you mentioned that, because that's one of the purposes, to get people on the path of writing and getting the stuff out there. But wearing your psychologist hat, it's also an opportunity for people to get their story out, which is very helpful for them, and could be, alluding to what I was saying earlier, very helpful for other people.
Yes.
I mean, Samantha, you particularly, because you are willing to perform and able to perform and feel strong enough to perform, you must be very conscious of your story, your feelings, impacting other people. Has anybody come to you and said, wow, I really liked your poem, that really made me think, that inspired me?
Most of the poems that I write is always relatable. And I've had a few people saying, I didn't know I was the only one feeling like this. So I think that is where I also get my inspiration from, to know that it's okay to feel the way I feel and actually share that feeling with someone else, because it might also just help someone that feels that they're all alone.
Fully. Tiffany, I don't know how old you are, but I don't know how long it is since you've been at school, but something in me wants to point my finger at all teachers and say, why didn't you help them write when they were young? Did you do anything that was like, apart from writing about my school holiday or my holiday, did you do anything like creative writing as such when you were at school?
No, we weren't given the opportunity at school to write. In my community and where I'm from, there's no space for creatives. There's no space for artists. There's no... Janine, gracefully I've met Janine and I've come across her to be able to... She's just... I hope that she knows that she is a seed of hope to many that don't know, because I just have something inside of me that wants to start something that she started, but not with us with the younger ones in my community because I feel like artists don't know that they are autistic. They don't know that we don't, there isn't enough people in this world that recognize the gift of an artist. And since I've been in this position, I just love the way when I am with other artists that there isn't much effort that you need to put in to be able to fit in. That doesn't make sense.
That's
like
wonderful.
it's like you are just authentically you. And that is what I love about the art world. So nobody on school, but I remember my English sir on high school, Mr. Librand, yeah, I attended Alo High, and I intentionally put in my bio that I attended Alo High School because I wanted I'm hoping that someone would read that I'm from that school, and that same learner from that school would know that they are also able to make it to where I am at this present moment.
Well, you know, from your lips to God's ears, hopefully that can happen. Even, you know, maybe sometimes it's better to do it out of school rather than in the confines, because I don't know what all your experience is, but sometimes other kids, when they see you doing something a little bit from the soul, there can be a bit of teasing and bullying and, so you think you're clever. So there's that sort of thing. So absolutely, you know, even very young children can start to write and understand their world. And I want to come back to you, Kyle. You talk about home and you talk about family. And somebody once said to me, if you're going to write an autobiography, just wait until everybody else is dead. Otherwise, you might be offending people. And I'm not suggesting that you're offensive here, but you just have to be very careful. I have a friend whose daughter has written a book, and she thought, whoa, you know, TMI, you know, too much information going on here. So what's your feeling about that? I mean, are your parents cool with you and your family and all your buddies cool with you saying whatever you want to say? Or do you find yourself dancing a little bit around other people's feelings?
No, I wouldn't say that I dance around people's feelings. I think writing allows us to express how we feel. And even if I use some of those people, I would ask their permission. But also more so, I'd invite them to challenge me then on it. So if I'm saying something that is offensive and you have a different view, let's sit down. Let's explain each other's views. And then we can then inform one another of something that we didn't know. So that's just how I take it then.
Yeah, yeah. Blaq Pearl, English? Oh, and you were talking about Blaq Pearl being a seed. In fact, she's a grain of sand. Isn't it a grain of sand inside a pearl? And I met Blaq Pearl when she was indeed a grain of sand and has subsequently grown and grown and grown. So you're helping other people shine. Yeah. Why English? Should this not be in Afrikaans? Or is it in Afrikaans? Am I looking at the translated version for my benefit?
I think there's some that's a bit mixed up. And I think Patrick in particular is in Afrikaans. I think it was Mark. And Patrick skryf baie mooi in Afrikaans. And so when I edited, I was like, ooh, ja, Patrick is heel wat in Afrikaans, sy story. So, waar sy? So, die man het mooi story.
Elsie's my Elstrus River.
Hy's 61 jaar oud, né? Patrick, kan ek my ouderdom sê? Hoe oud is hy nou, Patrick? 64, ek is nog, nee, hy lyk even jonger. Page 61 is Patrick.
No, but his story is on page 54.
Yeah, 54 in sy bio.
So did you specify, did you say whatever language, whatever makes Afrikaans, whatever floats your boat?
I gave it to them, decide which language you want to submit in, and they gave it as such. I do want to also add, we did some creative writing workshops. So after they submitted their stories, we did creative writing workshops. Some was physical in our training room in Portland at Alliance Française. And then the others who couldn't make it, we did the session online, workshops online. So where we actually developed and where we developed the stories a bit more, giving them more tips and ideas of how to continue writing, but in a creative way, like, for example, how to play with the words, how to reflect and look, and also read it, to just see where you can change and where you can, add if necessary. but also just to open up more within them with regards to writing, you know, how powerful it can be to express yourself and not to limit yourself so much, but just free yourself up to write more, you know?
Yeah.
And like we said earlier on also, the intention was for real people to tell their stories so that others can read their stories and can find that reflection and that connection. And in particular on the Cape Flats, there's not a lot of stories from people from here, you know? And so we always have to, even when we go to the library, we end up reading stories that's so far from our reality. And that needs to change. And we can't expect big publishers and people from outside of our communities to come and do it for us.
Yeah.
We have to do it ourselves.
Yeah,
and this is
where
this book comes from as well, from that point of view. We have to change and put out our stories ourselves, you know.
Yeah.
In that way, we continue breaking a cycle and changing the cycle, changing the way we go forward. So now we're opening up a whirlpool of, you know, hopefully
Yep.
more people from our communities being confident enough to write, create, and share their stories, you know. And some of them were naturally very talented with writing. So I had a great time doing the creative writing workshops with them as well. So just to further open up their minds of what more they can do with their writing.
Yeah, and I'm suspecting that outside there'll be a queue of people saying, sign me up. You know, because everybody sitting here has got many stories.
Yes.
And a couple of things, when I was talking to this group this morning, we were just sort of sharing thoughts, and somebody said that whilst writing is one thing, actually turning it into a play, just throwing this out there, you know, because many of your stories, you know, I could see yours, Berenice, I could see them all, you know, of even like little vignettes, little cameos of people standing up on this stage and performing their story. I think it's huge for the sort of whole self-confidence. But it's what you were saying, Kyle, that actually it helps you think, you know, because you don't just write a whole bunch of words that you think sound good. You think, but what do I really mean? And what do I really think? And it's not just writing your own story, but it's reading other people's stories. And I guess, has doing this, I'm assuming you've all read everybody else's stories. How was it, Samantha, how was it reading other people's stories?
There was actually a few stories, 2 to 3 stories in the book about a part that I was second-guessing on writing because that was the whole truth of my story. And I saw that their stories actually did that, and 2 of the stories I actually really related to. So,
yeah. You know, just going back to your point about we need to tell other people the truth about what we really are, I watched a video, or at least it was a Showmax thing last night, and it was about the community in Heinrich. And it was, somebody had put this together, and I thought, is that really how it is? Is that what really everybody thinks? You know, and it just made me think, because I don't know, I haven't been there, so I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but I thought, who made this? And the people who live there, did they make it? You know, is everybody telling whose truth is being told here? Just looking at the time, if anybody's got questions, if you're thinking about a question, and it's always the most difficult to be the first one to ask a question. Everybody always goes, no, not me. So if you've got questions, think about putting your hand up. And if we can see any hands going up, we'll wait for your hands to go up. But, was there a hand up?
Yes, there was one.
I can't see you, but please put your hand up and stand up, or at least just tell us your question.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to know, do you specialize in fictional stories as well?
Oh, yes. Yes, we actually, yes, one of the writers also is quite anonymous, like to be anonymous. So he actually submitted a fictional story, and I asked him, and I challenged him, and I asked, can you submit your authentic story, which he did then. But his fictional story about, if I may, I hope he doesn't mind, about climate change is something that we want to work on developing with him as well.
I was just going to ask you, is there any specific subjects? But
No.
Oh, Thank
No.
you.
You're welcome.
But that's such an interesting question because we know of many writers who've written something that claims to be fiction, meanwhile it's absolute gospel truth, but you can sort of hide behind it, or you can say things that you might not have been able to say when you talk about me, but you can, fiction is a very useful tool.
Yeah. Almost a safe way, also in a kind of a safe way of still telling a story.
Any more questions? Any more aspirant writers? Right, I'm not sure if I can see hands going.
Enige iets? Een Afrikaans zoek?
We've got a very nervous audience. Will you just
Kom eens,
go
heel
on?
nervous.
There's a question.
Karen. Oh, there's a mic, Karen.
Thank you for this discussion. That was very interesting. In your workshops, do you focus on the writing part only, or do you also train the new or not so new anymore writers how to perform their writing?
Good question. I focus mostly on the writing with them. But if they want to know how to perform, they're very welcome to also tap into that with me. What we also did in the workshops, just to add, is self-publishing, knowledge and information about self-publishing, and also some resources on how to write your own book and how to get it out there, and the different techniques and avenues. And now there's digital as well, which we... Ik is old school, man, like, I prefer having this book, this tangible, physical, and it's something you can share and pass on, and at the same time also support a real person, support someone, And then there's dynamics of environmental awareness where we must move away from paper, it's bad for the environment. Yes, I agree totally. At the same time, I can leave this for my daughter one day, and she doesn't have to go online, and she can still be part of the culture and essence of traditional reading and traditional reading material and a real book, So as much as we are moving, there she is, moving away and becoming more digital, I think it's still important also to have a real paper book in your hand or somewhere in your house, or a whole lot of them, in fact, like I do. So, yeah, self-publishing, I'm also trying to encourage that because one of the reasons they all struggle to get their writing out there is because they don't have a clue where to go. I don't know why publishers are so far from us or make it so hard for us to find them, that the impact it has is so hard, what's the word? Is so groot in termen van hoe het mensen limit, and how it keeps people back from and it breaks some of your confidence af, man. Dat jy gaan nie tyd kan doen eendag, you won't be able to reach to that, or you won't be able to get your writing or your work or your stories out there. So for that reason, I'm like, ach man, then whatever. Our hele publishing houses, ons maak wat ons moet maak, we do what we must do, and zullen ze dalen wat je moet, So, ons doen it, and for me, when I put out my book, Karada, So I self-published this in early 2000s, or now in 2015, actually, 2014, 2015. And, or was it 2005? Yeah, you can know nie. But anyway, I also ran around at meetings. I experienced it firsthand with publishers, several publishers. I had meetings. A year went by later, still nothing. And then I was like, nah, man, I had enough now because I want to get this is a collection of my poetry and stories, short stories and songs. And I was like, I want to get this out to people because whenever I performed, people would ask me, where can we find your writing? Where can we find it? Into ek net dik geraak van daai question. I must do something about it. Let me give it to people to find my work and enjoy it in the private space. And this is why I encourage people, and all of them, if you can't find a publisher, it's not the end of the world.
Can I
Self-published.
stop you on that? Because, because we can sit here and we can knock the publishing industry. The publishing industry is in a pretty bad way at the moment.
Yes.
Lockdown has not been kind to anybody.
Yeah.
But publishing is way down the line. First, you have to write the story.
Yeah.
And I think, that if publishing is tough, writing the story is tough. So I want to find out from all of our writers here where they're going with their possible book. Tiffany, what about you? Do you want to write a book? Where are you going to start? How's it going so far?
I am working on a book, but a book only with poems.
Okay.
And my inspiration is my community and my daily life. My role as a mother, as a church person, as someone that takes a taxi. So I find inspiration around me. Yeah.
Okay. So the theme is you. The theme is my life.
Yes.
And are you sort of stacking up the poems? When do poems come to you?
When do they come?
Yeah, I mean, does something happen during the day and you think, right.
So the first one I wrote for the book that I want to get out there, I was sitting in the taxi on my way to the mall on a school day, and this a boy, he looked as if he was 8, 9 years old, and he was the sliding door operator. And for the life of me, a poem just went through me about this boy. And then the taxi driver referred to the boy as his son. And I just couldn't understand how this father would allow his son to be out of school and not get an opportunity to be better. And I just had to write about that. And I felt so better about that whole situation, because we tend to not want to say things about when we see something wrong. It's like we're not in the position to give our opinion about a certain thing. So if I had to ask that boy in the taxi, why are you not in school? It would be wrong of me. The people in the taxi would ask me, like, it's not your business.
Yeah.
But it is my business, because it takes, my child is your child, but it's not actually. We say my child is your child, but it's not. Because if I tell your child not to throw a stone at it, you're going to be angry. That's...
Yeah, if people go away with nothing else, everybody's going to remember that little boy doing the sliding.
Yeah.
That's a story. Thanks for sharing that one. What about you, Berenice? You've got this big story. What's your next move?
My next move is, as I said in my book, actually in my biography, is I want to tell my story with people going through domestic violence and child abuse, rape, and all those things, that you can break that chain of inequality, and together we can. Also, only you alone can make that change in life and to find your purpose in life. So for me, I want to start with my book is for people going through domestic violence. I also started my own organization now. It's called Eden Community Outreach for New Beginnings. So the money that I make from the book, I'm going to keep that like for funding for people going through domestic violence, and that having like workshops and training for helping them to come out of their situation. You can make it, but it depends entirely upon you. Only you can change yourself. I cannot change you, but you can change you. So that is the story that I want to bring out across to our community. It's all about you. You can make that change in your life. It doesn't matter wherever you come from, like all of us have our own stories, and we tell it through poetry. We do it through, like Janine, do songs and acting. I would also like to share that Janine is also one of my role models. I've known Janine since she had that bowl there. like we will say, the bliss. That is how something about her drew me to her. So she was always my role model, and I think that was about 20 years ago, I think. And that is how long I've known Janine. Never met her, I only met her now, but she was my inspiration. And that is how I wanted to tell my story. For all of us went through some type of violence. We've been abused physically, mentally, emotionally, financially. Only you can make that change in your life. So your circumstances cannot define who you are. So that is what I want to bring across to our community.
Thank you,
and to our people.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Well done, you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think,
you very much.
you know, the other thing, I mean, she may not directly have been, but sometimes it's a good thing to get a writing buddy. Somebody that you can say, look, just read this. Is it rubbish? What is it? You know. So, but that's really. So we've got the observation, we've got the message, and what have we got from you, Samantha? What's your book going to be about?
Just to add to that, I am actually busy on writing my own book. I'm at chapter 6 already.
Oh.
I think Janine can remember because my story was...
She didn't want to submit that one, and I said, no. Send me a shorter version of that.
So the title is Breathe, and it is actually about a lady that also was going through domestic violence. That's also a project I want to invest in for making a collection of books because I feel that each one story is important. So I started with that first book. It's a 54-year-old that finally got the chance or the opportunity to speak. And I talk through her in the book, and it's also about domestic violence.
Wow, gosh. I can see next year's Open Book Festival, we've got 4 candidates here already. Well, I don't know. What about you, Kyle? I feel you've got a trilogy up your sleeve. What's your book going to be about?
I think for me, the next move of where I want to start is I want to create an anthology of poems because I also love writing poems. And I think the writers I surround me with, my friends, also with Blaq Pearl, I think one of my friends that I write with, and her name is Joy Shante, she published her own book as well, Anthology. And I said, why can't I do this? And I think the theme that I want to surround, or what my poems really to bring across is what I feel, and I think this is just my perspective and my opinion. I want to write to young men to say that it's okay to express emotion. It's okay to cry. It's okay to not feel, to say, but look, I'm not okay. Because sometimes we're not allowed that space. You're just allowed to say, come, Kyle, we must go clean the yard. We must fix this car, we must go fix this car and so forth. So I want to bring across that there are many things young men can unlock if they allow to feel the emotion, to allow what they go through. So I think I would surround my stories and anthologies around young men.
I'll buy the first copy. I think that's just such an incredibly good idea. And this is, I really hate making things sort of gendered, but actually, here we sit. Of all your applications, of all the people who submitted, guys, girls?
Oh, quite a
Did you
mix,
count?
but mostly women.
Yeah.
Just a few men.
Yeah.
It was very interesting, and kind of, I think it has to do a bit maybe with what Carl was saying about, it's maybe not a fashionable thing for men to want to be part to write, who have their books out. But I think it's a step in the right direction to have even these few men in our book to inspire others. Nancy, I think the sir in front have a question because I saw his hand up before our time's up. Is there a mic? Oh, there's one coming through.
Yep.
There before you.
Hello, good afternoon, Nancy and the panel. Just one question. How do you market your book?
Very good question. Thank you so much for that. So we've been struggling a bit. So far we've used social media and our WhatsApp groups. But it gets out there because now I've been approached by some libraries. Samantha's also been approached by a local library. So libraries are approaching us. We also go to them. where we have sessions. We're also busy collaborating with other organizations in order to have book clubs where we can market, promote, and sell our books directly to our community. Yeah, that's so far. And also media come and do interviews with us, like the local community newspapers. So,
Small question. Have you, if you walk into a bookshop and you offer to have a few books on the shelves, do you find them accommodating, or do you find them as difficult as the publishers are to get to publish your book?
We need Mervyn.
My past experiences actually have been exactly that, very difficult. Either especially if you're self-publishing. So you have to go through a publisher to get into big bookshops, bookstores. So we struggle with that because we're not mainstream publishing company. In fact, we're an organization, that I don't think many organizations have done something like this, where we taken the lead and published a book. So yeah, it's quite difficult. It's very challenging, and that's why we go the other routes. But the book lounge are always very accommodating. My books are always there. I must give props to the book lounge. That makes us feel more warm and welcome to have our books there.
Has it ever occurred to you that I won't say struggling, for want of a better word, that up-and-coming poets and writers and authors, that we should establish a bookshop?
Yes.
And all dig in as far as the finances are concerned, and then we have our books on display. Instead of, at this late stage, still going and begging and asking people, please put our books on your shelves. Shouldn't we get together and open a bookstore?
Yeah, that's a very good idea.
And have all our books there.
And have everyone in the networks. Like what I did with them was, I said, family and friends, let them spread the word of our books. In fact, the Blaqpearl Foundation gifted each one of the writers 20 books for them to sell. And the proceeds with that money, they can do whatever they want to. But I also suggested, use the proceeds of that book and invest it within your own upcoming book. So for now, it's really word of mouth that we're spreading and trying to sell the book. And I try through my channels in my organization network, but that's a very good idea. And I think we must, through the book clubs, perhaps start having these bookshops established within different communities and have it as a franchise.
We're going to have to take this conversation offline. But
Thank you so much.
I think it's a very good idea. Just one last thing. It's sometimes a good idea because 150 Rand, which is what you're selling your book for some people, that's not a lot. For other people, it's unaffordable.
Too much, yeah.
But if you say, if they buy 2 books, they can take one and you can give the other one to somebody who really needs it, who can't afford it, which is another way of getting
There's
books
so many
out there.
ideas, like it's always buzzing with very creative ideas.
We need to ask the Open Book Festival to have another session on how to get the books out there. It's been wonderful. If anybody would like to get hold of your book, I know that your website is under construction, but on your Facebook, which is Blaqpearl Foundation, there's information, and I think they are being sold out there. So if you haven't got one yet, buy one.
Please do.
Janine,
and enjoy the
Tiffany,
stories.
Berenice, Samantha, Kyle, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all of you for coming. Thank you so much.